My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
Welcome to another episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. If you've been around the metaphysical or spiritual space for any length of time, then our guest this week needs no introduction. But if you're just starting out and are tuning into these topics for the first time, then whoa, are you in for one heck of a special treat. Dr. Theresa bullard-whyke is a physicist, author, speaker, and an international teacher. She's a change agent and the host of Mystery Teachings on Gaia TV. Now, throughout her lifelong journey, she's discovered innovative ways to weave together her formal education as a PhD physicist with her deep training in the modern mystery school lineage. That is so exciting to me. Now, she's got a passion for bridging science and spirituality in a practical way, which is why this is so far up our alley. She's presented to live audiences all around the world since 2002, and she's helped thousands of people awaken to their greater potential. I know I say it all the time, Karen, but beyond blessed is what comes to mind today as we welcome the esteemed Dr. Theresa to our show. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to join you, and thank you for the invitation.
We are so excited to have you on today.
Yep. I would be lying if I didn't say I'm geeking out just a little bit because I followed you for so long to actually have a conversation with you. It's exciting to me. So,
and it's not just a little bit. It's been all week.
Okay. Some secrets should be kept secret, Karen, you know? Anyway, let's get to the topic, shall we? So I don't feel so awkward. First question that comes immediately to mind, Dr. Theresa. It's not often that a world-renowned physicist with a PhD in the field is quite as open to the reality of metaphysics, much less the teachings of the modern mystery school. How does someone with your credentials bridge that gap?
Well, it goes back to ultimately my own journey, of becoming a physicist. And especially once I got into the PhD program, I was immersed into 80 hours a week of just left brain science and do the derivations, pass the testing, do the research, take all the classes and all of that. And just in that immersion, after about a year of it, I found myself very out of balance and actually very dissatisfied with the experience of pursuing a PhD. And it left me depressed and it affected everything in my life. And so I ended up needing to, for my own well-being and my own sense of joy and purpose, I needed to find what's going to bring the balance back to my life. Not just the balance, but also ultimately the joy and the sense of meaning. And I tried all of the little aspects of life that I had prior, like athletics and social time and creative hobbies and all of these things. And I brought them back in systematically into my life. But and they helped. But the key ultimately ended up being a spiritual dimension to life. And so once I dove into realizing that spirituality was important for that sense of joy and purpose, I got very excited about it, especially as I was looking at how do the science and the metaphysics complement each other? How does quantum physics kind of parallel with like various ancient spiritual philosophy? And it got me very excited. And then as I pursued it further and further, I realized, I went through my own healing process to realizing how important it was to follow a path of the heart versus just a path of the mind. And in my process of still pursuing my PhD, I actually was also diving very deep into the world of the mystery school teachings and Western Hermetic teachings and Kabbalah and alchemy, and my passion ended up really igniting there. And so once I got finished with the PhD process, I thought, I got to follow my heart. Like I just continued to do it. I was already in the midst of it while still kind of had these two parallel lives, and one in physics and one in metaphysics. And then once I got done with my PhD, I thought I have to merge these two. I can't live two separate lives here anymore. And And I chose the metaphysics because I saw that it had the most value, direct impact in people's lives.
And how did that feel coming out of the spiritual closet, so to speak? Because here you're
Yeah.
this physicist, and that's a very mainstream kind of scientific mindset. And now you're into the woo a little bit. How was that? Was that easy for you? Did you get a lot of kind of strange looks? How did that go?
Yeah, it was a process. I was very much in the closet, so to speak, as a spiritual scientist. And um, I remember being very afraid while I was in graduate school, because in the academic world of physics, it's very much like, ooh, don't go venturing into those woo-woo topics or those pseudo-science topics, because you're going to lose your credibility and whatnot. But my journey became one of, I need to be true to myself. And this is about finding the courage to break out of the mold, to break out of the box. And once I realized, actually, I want to pursue a path of trying to bridge the science with the spirituality. I knew I'm not going to fit in the box no matter what. I'm going to have to just be more on that pioneering front and, be okay with not being accepted or approved of by everyone. But by being true to myself and pursuing what I was passionate about, I've enjoyed every moment of the journey. It's not always been easy, but it's been quite an adventure.
Mm. Well, I want to say personally, thank you for doing that, taking that courageous leap, because people like me who really, you speak to us, right? People who can't just accept things offhand, to have someone who is a physicist then really start diving into that rabbit hole of metaphysics and spirituality through the lens of quantum physics, but still, nonetheless, it's exciting for me, because now I can allow myself to really take a look at these things from a way that I can accept, rather than, oh, come on. Right. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Kabbalah a little bit earlier, and we know that you are very deeply entrenched in the modern mystery school. And I think it touches on a lot of Kabbalah teachings within the school. We've not tackled the Kabbalah on the show. So for those that may not be aware, can you give us a little bit of a rundown as to what that is?
Yeah, most people identify Kabbalah as being a mystical branch of Judaism. And there is definitely a deep tradition in the Jewish mysticism when it comes to Kabbalah, but actually it predates the religion. So it's an ancient tradition of wisdom through direct experience. It's Gnostic in a way, like there's gnosis in the sense of having direct visions, direct understanding, but it asks some of the biggest questions, like how did we get here? Where do we come from? Why are we here? What's our purpose? And it has been accumulated and developed as a system of thought plus practices that ultimately are about helping us know ourselves and know our connection to the greater universe and understand how like the divine realms might work. And so they work with the tree of life, and the tree of life is like this sacred geometry glyph that they say is like the mother of all geometries, like all the other geometries come from it. But it's not really a human invention, because it's the same structure that you would find inside the lattice of a crystal or inside of our own DNA. And so this is really, in the Kabbalistic system, it's the blueprint of life and the blueprint of creation. And we're trying to understand that and gain deeper insights into it. And, when I first heard about Kabbalah, I had no clue. It was right over my head every time they talked about it. But I would get this like internal buzz when they talked about it, like, there's something here I need to know. I need to know more about this. And I keep getting that this is something for me. And so I dove into it. And when I dove into it, I realized, especially very early on, I was reading about some of the creation stories, the cosmology of Kabbalah. And then at the same time, I was also hearing in astrophysics lectures, the cosmology of our modern day astrophysics and how they think the universe came to be. And I thought, wow, they're saying the same thing. And so these Kabbalists have had this this vision and this understanding for thousands of years. And now our modern day science is just coming around to saying the same thing, maybe from a mathematical language and different, use of words, but it's the same essence. So I thought, what else do these Kabbalists know? And how can their understanding and their wisdom help guide us with some of our modern day scientific understanding? And the Tree of Life became like this map for taking everything that I learned in physics and mapping it onto the Tree of Life, and everything that I learned, even human psychology, and mapping it onto the Tree of Life. Because it's very holographic in that sense. You can apply that same pattern to, the macrocosm as you can to the microcosm. So it just became this amazing tool and system of thought and study for really pulling it all together. The science, the metaphysics, the personal, the interpersonal. It's quite vast, but really amazing.
So was it more of an intellectual curiosity that started you bridging the gaps, or was it a specific, physical and emotional experience that made you really want to bridge the two, science and metaphysics?
That's a great question. I think it was all of it. It was all of it. Like, I've always had this curiosity, and I've always asked a lot of questions. And the thing that actually drove me to become a scientist in the first place was that I really wanted to understand the universe and how it worked. I remember even before I went into college, I was looking out at the stars at night out in the desert. My mom and I were driving from Sedona up to Northern Arizona University on a trip during a summer to go and look at different universities. And we had just been in Sedona now, so caveat here, I grew up with a very metaphysical mom. And so they didn't really impose or indoctrinate any of me or my siblings with their belief system. They just allowed us to explore and make up our own minds. And as a child and as a teenager, as a teenager, I really held my mom kind of at arm's length, because she wore purple all the time, and she would arrive at school in the purple minivan and pick us up, and she, would wear very, like she was eccentric or what's the word? That's not the right word.
Well,
but
pardon the purple coloring for a show.
Yes. She's very extroverted and outspoken, and, I just wanted to fit in, right?
Yeah.
So I really held all this sort of woo-woo stuff out at arm's length, like way out there. And, but I had the exposure to it. I had exposure to Reiki and things like this, the Monroe Institute, and brainwave entrainment, all these types of things I've been exposed to as a youth. But it wasn't until I really got away, off to university and then graduate school that I got more interested. And so I forgot the question, but just sharing my story. I was just curious. Yeah. In terms of, that's what it was. I was sharing how I got into physics. And so I remember looking out at the stars thinking, wow, what's out there? That's amazing. There's so many stars out there. I want to know what's out there. And that's when I realized, I want to study astronomy or astrophysics. And that ultimately what led me into science in the first place. So these questions, just always questions and wanting to understand the universe. But I would say with Kabbalah and with my own journey in the mystery school, I grew so much in my first year. I transformed so much. I healed so much at an inner level, letting go, changing relationship dynamics, like all of this. I really matured and grew through the process of immersing myself in the journey of what we call ascending the tree of life through the modern mystery school teachings, that it was like, we covered so much ground in a year. And the personal transformation that happened from that first year of my experience with the mystery school is what really made me look at this and go, okay, it's more than just philosophy. It's more than just knowledge and information. There's a real powerful transformational experience that's happening here, despite my skepticism, despite my intellectualization of everything. and despite my resistance towards even looking at my emotional stuff that needed to be cleared, I was transforming through it. And the results were ultimately what really sold me.
You are so speaking our language. It's crazy. So then I got to ask the question. In your estimation, do you have not a single sliver of doubt that this spiritual awakening stuff is real? Like, is there something in the back of your mind that goes, maybe I'm just making this stuff up, or maybe I'm like a wish fulfillment thing, or are you completely sure this stuff is real?
Well, by now I'm completely sure, but I didn't start that way. I started with a lot of doubt, a lot of skepticism, always asking questions, always poking holes at the theories and the teachings, and well, what about this and what about that, and seeing inconsistencies, and how do these two things seem like they're contradictory? How do they, how does it all work? But ultimately, what I found was it wasn't so much about the understanding it all as much as the experiencing it. And through my own direct experiences, and not rejecting those experiences, but just letting them be there. I may not understand them, but I cannot doubt that happened. And so those experiences let me know that regardless of whether I directly see it or experience it with 5 physical senses, I know it's happening because there's other things going on that I can't deny. And so that experience, I think, is ultimately what it takes you. And also with like the work we do in the Tree of Life and the Mystery School in general, it's like going beyond the knowledge into application, into understanding, into serving others with that understanding, and having direct contact with the spiritual realm. And in that direct contact, you move beyond faith and hoping and believing into knowing, because you've directly experienced it.
This is a physicist saying this, Karen. It makes me very excited.
And like she's talking my language now.
I know. It's funny because she's talking my language, then she hops over and talks yours, and she hops over and talks mine.
But speaking of language, really quick, I know we have a lot of people listening, and they might not be familiar with the Mystery School. So can you just tell them what that means?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Mystery School is in its original sense, is an ancient tradition that has lineage, meaning there's an unbroken line from teacher to student, but not just of the teachings and the knowledge, but also of a energetic sort of transmissions, initiatory process. So there are actual initiations that take place, and that lineage is unbroken. So it goes back several thousand years of this unbroken chain of passing on the knowledge, the tools, the keys of empowerment, and conducting initiations and various activations and various things that empower us. And then the modern Mystery School is ancient lineage, and brings forward these teachings from ancient times, but it's also has a purpose. It has a mission. And that mission is towards creating a more peaceful and balanced world. And it's always been a bit of a sponge for whatever works, right? Whatever ancient or even some modern new paradigm kind of tools and methods that really truly work to help awaken people to their full potential, and to help us create better lives and help us create better communities and so forth. Like, that is what we are all about. So what I loved about it when I came to it was that it was one place, and I'd done a lot of searching prior to finding it. And when I came to the Mystery School, the modern Mystery School, I loved it because it was like everything I'd explored previously, whether it was ancient Egyptian or shamanism and Native American kind of stuff, or the Kabbalah and the esoteric or the alchemy, like all of these things came together in one place. So it's not just like one system or one spiritual kind of philosophy. It takes all of them and whatever they work and understanding they've all mastered different aspects. And it comes together in one place where you can access all of it. And so it's like, I just found everything I wanted. And not only that, it was that the tools, the methods, the initiations, the activations, the empowerments, everything I've received from the Mystery School continued to propel me to the next level. I never hit that plateau or that wall, like this is as far as this can take me. It just kept going and going and going. So as long as I wanted to keep growing, I found a path to do so in the mystery school.
Karen, I'm going to hit, I'm going to look into that. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Traditionally, from my understanding of the mystery school, traditionally, it was very exclusive to a certain group of people. It was passed down to these very exclusive folks. But now it's opening up. It's a lot more accessible to a lot of people out there. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into the modern mystery school, but also the physics of metaphysics with esteemed physicist Dr. Theresa. We'll be right back. And now back to the skeptic metaphysicians. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We are in an incredible dialogue, a conversation with physicist Dr. Theresa bullard-whyke, who has graciously deigned to meet with us today. I'm trying to control my excitement because I've been a fan of Dr. Theresa's for a very long time, and getting the opportunity to talk to her today just goes beyond what I had hoped. So much so that I keep forgetting all the questions I want to ask you. So we're talking a little bit about the modern mystery school, and I do want to continue down that road a little bit. But before we go there, as a physicist, I have to ask you the question. And I know you bridge both sides of the equation here, so I kind of know where this is going. But in your estimation, what is your definition of God?
Ooh.
You go for the big stuff.
Hey, I got you once. I got to ask you all the questions.
To me, God is not the sense of a religious, like some kind of patriarchal figure who sits on high and judges us. That's not my understanding of God. And I would say before I came into the mystery school, I had already come to an understanding of God as more like this universal spiritual intelligence that's behind everything, but we can't anthropomorphize it, meaning we can't like project our humanness onto it. And when I came into Kabbalah, in the mystery school teachings, there's this concept that they talk about called Ein Sof, or Ein Sof. It means without end or limitless. And it is the source, it's infinite. And in the Kabbalistic tradition, it's like everything I could say about that source, I could say exactly the opposite as well. And so it contains everything within it. And then there are also levels or maybe different emanations or expressions of that one source out. And then, so to me, if I were to really define God, I would say everything is God. I am God, you are God, we are God, everything is God. And I look at it all as in the principle of as above, so below. So if I want to know God, I need to know myself. And if I just look at my own body, for example, right, we have a physical vessel here. That's not who I am, but it is a vessel. And it is a means by which I can accomplish certain things in this physical experience. And this body, if we just, look at the anatomy of it, we have all these different systems, right? We have our circulatory system and our lymph system and the nervous system. All these different systems have different organs, and those organs are made up of different tissues and different cells, and then down to the very DNA. I look at God as something like that the universe is like the body of God, and there's different systems within that body that, like what we might call in Kabbalistic tradition, we might call an archangel or an angel is sort of like the head of a different system, maybe a major organ of a system that operates within the flow of health and vitality within the whole system of the divine and the universe. And it's all important. It's all interconnected. It's all a very integrated living system. And no one part is more important than another. They're just, you go from this sort of oneness or wholeness to the infinite diversity. And we're like the cells of the body of God. So I use this principle of correspondence of as above, so below a lot, because it really helps us gain a lot of insight into who we are and the universe and how we fit into the bigger picture.
What about love? Does that factor in at all?
Yeah, for sure. Love is, I would say love is a force of creation. It's like the number one energy. We talk about the agape love, that love that comes from the divine source, and that is the main force that drives creation forward. That it's the extension of that will of the divine to reach out and awaken, all the various potentials that are there within the universe. And love is, so it's not really an emotion. It's not really a romantic thing in this sense of love. It's a force of creation, but it's one of the most powerful for sure.
A force of creation. I love that. So then, Dr. Theresa, why are we here? Like, why, if we are cells from the body of God, why did God shed us onto this planet to do what?
You want to get into the deep metaphysical teachings here.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. Can you break it down in like 5 minutes? Because,
Yeah, keep it short, right? Well, so I'll come back to one of the Kabbalistic teachings, if I may. Now, I want to also say that the mystery school teachings are not all Kabbalistic. There's Hermetic teachings, there's Kabbalistic, there's alchemical, there's shamanic. There's a lot of different teachings, but Kabbalah is a good language for me. But even in the teachings of Hermes, he says that humankind was created with two natures. One was the spiritual or the immortal, the eternal nature, and the other was the physical or the mortal, the somewhat limited nature. And because of these two natures, we were created to become even greater than the quote gods, from the ancient sort of systems. And so we have, because of our, in a way, we come from one source, but we've come into an experience that is dual. And because of that dual nature, we have extra challenge. And in that extra challenge, we have the potential, we have the opportunity to grow beyond what we would have been had we only stayed in the spiritual nature. So there's an alchemy that happens so alchemy works through the tension and the interaction of differences. And so when you bring physical and spiritual together, which are very different, it creates an alchemical process or opportunity. Now you can stay stuck in that. Like a lot of people are they get lost in the physicality of things and they lose track of the spiritual side. And they don't really progress. They don't go through the alchemy. Life might try to prod them forward with different experiences, but they have to at some point consciously and purposely take up that journey of alchemy, of transformation, right? Alchemy means the transformation and transmutation of ourself to a higher form. And then you have the people who are just purely wanting to hang out in the spiritual bliss and check out of the physical life. And that also doesn't take you through the alchemy, because it's really easy to be enlightened when you're living in a cave or on the mountaintop or in the ashram, and you're not actually immersed in life dealing with, the reality of the physical world. So it's actually through, in the Western mystery school tradition, it's through the living a spiritual life while still engaged in a very physical kind of experience of life, engaging with people, engaging with the dynamics of life, that we have like the highest opportunity for the alchemy to happen through the tension of the differences. But we have to walk both worlds. And so one of the reasons why we're here is to maximize that potential, and become even greater than what we were when we were just pure spirit. And there's a lot of other deeper, there's so many ways I could go with that, but this is something that we teach very deeply in within the mystery school tradition, and in our actually in our Empower Thyself class, the first step of initiation that we do, we dive pretty deep into this conversation, but it's a good long 2-hour long conversation.
I think this is the first time I'm leaving with more questions than I have.
The mystery
now I want to know
have a way of doing this.
Yeah, they sure do.
So one thing I want to ask now with the mystery teachings, is there the belief in reincarnation as well, or do you just come one time and just do it all?
So we have a different model. that
Oh.
does not include reincarnation, but it's not like a one and done. It's not like a Christian kind of, if you come and don't come to a perfect, acceptance of Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you're damned to hell. We don't do that either. And we don't, the challenge with the reincarnation model is you have to come back again and again and again, but you forget what you learned before. And yet you have to come and you have to do it perfectly to escape the karmic wheel, but you're not going to remember what you learned before. So it's like flunking grade school over and over and over again and never being told what you did wrong. So it
Oh my
actually we see it as a model that actually gets in the way of our progression. And so we have a different model. We do talk about past lives, but from a different perspective. And we do talk about what you can do beyond this life as a way to continue growing and resolving, cleaning up karma and so forth. But what you do here and now in this life matters a lot. And so make the most of this life, do the best you can to evolve and grow and whatnot while you're here. And again, this is like a 2-hour long conversation. So to get into the depths of it, I'm just going to say, come and do the Empower Thyself if you want to know more about that, because it's in our first step of initiation. We lay in all of these core foundational teachings, and then we give you lots of tools to work with to really start taking bigger strides on that path to knowing thyself.
Dr. Theresa, over 100 episodes, Karen has been asking that question, and you finally gave her the answer she was looking for.
Yes.
So
Well,
she is
I
excited.
gave her a new opportunity to get even more answers, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. The one thing I
Yep,
found
yep.
with the mystery
Well-
school teachings is that with every question that was answered, about 1,000 more questions would open up. So, but that's great because
I'm feeling that.
that encourages our pursuit to explore even further and open our minds and expand our consciousness.
Glad that we got on the conversation of the modern mystery school, because it is something that I've been curious about for a long time. I think this is going to launch me into a deeper investigation into it. Now, earlier on the show, you had mentioned that you had these experiences that you felt were the proof you needed, right? Not the intellectual part of it, but rather things that you experienced. I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there any kind of experiences that you can share with us that helped you to understand that this path is ideal for you?
Every step of the way. I'll start with just the first, my first step within this path was to receive something called a life activation. And I had it's just a one-on-one private session where it's like involving some energy, kind of energy balancing, but then it also awakens some of the DNA blueprints within us. And I had lots of different sessions by then, energy sessions. I thought I'd already activated my DNA through just my own intentions and so forth, and some practices. But when I went, and I was open but skeptical, asking lots of questions. I felt the energy. It's like, okay, it didn't knock my socks off. But afterwards was what really impressed me. It was that, even if I forgot about it, it kicked off this sequence of incremental adjustments in my life. More self-awareness came in, realizations of what choices I was making in my life that was serving what wasn't, how I might do it differently. And, I started making all these little changes in life at a very practical level, all from that one life activation. It was all very intuitive. And then 4 months down the line was when I was, for the first time, able to put my finger on the dot of, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. This is why I want to get this physics PhD. This is where I want to go with it afterwards. And that bridging science and spirituality only came 4 months, within 4 months after. Prior to that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just following the system. So that just started a whole sequence. And then when I got initiated for the first time, I found that it sped up my progression 10 times faster. It accelerated. Everything started to speed up in my growth. Ultimately, I became so impressed with the results that I was getting from whether it was a healing or another initiation or whatever it was I was receiving, that I thought, well, I want to be able to share this with others. And as I started sharing with others, especially when I became someone who could initiate others, it was in that moment in initiating someone that I feel so much flow from this beautiful spiritual energy, this overwhelming joy and like blasting your heart open kind of energy all during that ceremony when I'm initiating, especially. And,
Cool.
and you get this, every person you initiate, there's a different energy that comes through because each person is unique. And so when you're the person conducting that ceremony for others, it's like you feel all the differences. You feel people's ancestors come forward. You feel like different keys waking up for them. I mean, it's so amazing. And I know, like when I'm on that initiation blanket, it's like, there's no doubting this because it's so clear and it's so present. And every time I'm at mystery school classes, it's like, I'm in such a clear space. Like I get so many downloads and so much ideas and clarity of what I want to do moving forward. And then I have to journal it because it's when you step out of that energy that, life can come in and it can kind of distract or make you forget a little bit. So I find that, when I'm in the energy of the mystery school, it's so clear and so high that naturally so that, there's no denying it.
Wow. Sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Oh
let
my
me
gosh.
just remind everyone, this is a physicist, a PhD talking about this stuff. I know modern mystery school has a lot of different traditions into the teachings and things like that, but is there anything in the, I guess, the New Age movement, although that's a terrible word these days, but any traditions that you feel are closest to helping someone to spiritual awaken? I watched your out-of-body experiences. Here's how you do it, the step-by-step video on the Mystery Teachings show. And everyone who's been listening to the show knows astral projection, out-of-body experiences are my nirvana, right? That's what I'm striving to achieve at some point. Never have, but I still have hope that someday I'll get there. Is that what we should be focusing on, is the actual experiences of astral travel, mediumship, Reiki, healing, that kind of thing? Or are they distractions? Or what's the best way to move forward to spiritually awaken, in your estimation?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking
Yes,
that.
That was like 6 questions.
Well, I just figure I'll get them all in one time and,
This is something I've actually been really observing and contemplating a lot lately. Is what is happening within the New Age movement. Now, I wouldn't say I started off New Age, but I started off as a scientist, right? So I was actually very skeptical with New Age because it comes with a lot of promise, but not always a lot of delivery, or, following through on those promises. And there's a lot of hand waving kind of in terms of like, this is why it works, but it's really
quantum
at the
physics.
surface level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I had a lot of exposure to the New Age, and what I think there's some good things, and I think there's some really not good things happening in the New Age, and I think it really requires a lot of discernment. The mystery school tradition in general is not New Age; it's ancient, and it's lineage based, it's tradition based, and it's tried and true. And so I found personally that I could put more of my trust in it because it was a tried and true, well-walked path versus an experimental, well, let's just play around with this phenomenon and that phenomenon. And what I find in the New Age movement today, it is, and there's a lot of spiritual leaders out there who are promoting these the phenomenology of it all, right? So let's promote the experience and let's create some kind of immersive like retreat where people can have the experience. And the whole goal is about having the experience, whether we're talking an ayahuasca event or an out-of-body journey or a mediumship kind of, or a paranormal thing. There's all this phenomenology happening. And I think it's really dangerous because the experience is not the goal. I think that these tools are important. Like some of these tools are important, and many of these tools come out of the ancient mystery tradition. But the way in which they've been sort of extrapolated out of their context and made to be the thing is a bit it's very misleading. So, for example, astral travel. This is a really important tool that we use in order to know thyself. It's not about having the experience of an out of body thing. That's the phenomena of it that I think some people feel like, well, if I can have that, then it proves to me that I am more than my physical body. and I need that proof, right? Or I need something that's going to blast me open because my ego is so strong, or because my mind and my doubt is so strong. So I have to have something that just like is beyond what I can doubt. And so I'm going to go and have that psychedelic experience. And then I'll know that it gets my ego out of the way, and then I have the experience. So there's this chasing, we call it chasing the dragon. We're chasing the experience. And that experience, okay, you might have that experience, but then what? What are you going to do with that? What is that about? And if you make it about the experience, then people keep chasing the experience, and they have to do it again and again and again, whatever it was that got them to that experience. And it's very easy to kind of lose track of the real purpose of why we're here. We're here to awaken our full potential, but we're also here to create a world of balance and a world of peace. And if I'm so stuck on chasing the dragon, I'm losing track of the fact that I need to serve and make this world a better place. And so our goal in the mystery tradition is not to chase the experience. We will have experiences along the way. That's a natural byproduct of actually awakening and expanding your consciousness by using the tools. It will happen. But the ultimate goal is to know thyself, to realize what your true purpose in life is, and to serve and help bring, these higher revelations to others as well, so that we can create a better world together, because we're here to co-create that. So I think that the aim between New Age versus Mystery School is very different. But you will have the experiences along the way as you are awakening. That's just a natural part of the process. But you got to be careful about forcing it. And when you force it, there can be consequences. It can get dangerous. And this is why often the mystery schools you mentioned before, they've been closed door, because there are very powerful tools and techniques, but we have to be mature enough to really understand what the bigger aim is, versus just chasing after the experience, or I want to be powerful and magical, and so give me the knowledge and give me the tools. And there's the entitlement stuff is what we need to shift.
Yep. I feel so called out right now. I know.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And it is, you are 100% correct that my goal for the astral travel, for me, for out of body experiences, is to get that proof. I've always been one that I need to feel it, touch it, see it, taste it, whatever. Just, I need some sort of physical proof that this stuff is there for me to believe it. And to me, out of body experience would be that. If I really felt it, then that was real. They say, we've interviewed people who have talked about astral projection. They talked about it being more real than the reality we're in. At least it feels that way. That would convince me once and for all. Now, instead, I'm having these great conversations with people like you, Dr. Theresa, that come from my world, my viewpoint, that allow me to then say, okay, I can surrender that expectation, or that expectation of proof, of physicality, in favor of a more mature thought process behind this stuff. And I appreciate people like you coming on the show and talking to us about this stuff.
Yeah. And, I can relate, because as a scientist, I was taught, well, you got to prove it to me and then I'll believe it. Right. And prove it to me in a way that is not like it's objective. It needs to be an objective proof, not a subjective proof. And so that was my training. And in my own journey, I had to learn that attachment was to needing the proof from some external thing was actually, it was programming of the ego. And that the true spiritual connection is actually very subtle. And we have, Kabbalah, I think there's a beautiful lesson in the translation of the word Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive, but sometimes it's also translated as to accept. And sometimes they also talk about it as to reveal. So in order for me to receive a revelation, I have to accept it. And in that acceptance, so sometimes that it comes through in a very subtle way. And if I reject it, I've just closed the door to it. But if I accept it and I allow it in, then it expands, and then it can reveal, and then that revelation can lead to a revolution. So we need to move away from, especially in America. Sorry, and I'm an American too, but I travel all over the world and I see that in America, it's like we need everything to be bigger than life in order for us to, feel like it's real. And that's not how it works when it comes to true spiritual progression. Sometimes it's the smallest, subtlest shift, but it means a lot when when it really impacts your day-to-day life, right? So it's the day-to-day things that create a whole new pattern, a whole new way of life that brings greater quality and sense of knowing yourself and sense of direction and connection to spirit, all of this on a day-to-day basis that can be small, but in the cumulative effect on a day-to-day, life experience, it makes a huge difference. And so instead of the sort of old, I had to really shift from the seeing is believing paradigm and come to this just opening up to possibilities and just allowing without judging as good or bad or right or wrong or yes or no. And this is where we come into more of a quantum mindset, is allowing there to be many possibilities simultaneously. But then ultimately, when stepping into the magical realm, it was believing is seeing. That sometimes our mind, if we doubt something, if we don't believe, we will block ourselves from seeing it. But it can be right in front of our face. And so we have to actually shift to opening up to possibilities and believe. And as you start to allow that belief to be there, at least as a possibility, you can start to perceive. And that, so it's believing is seeing, is the sort of the way we shift into the mystical. And so, yeah, I really had to reprogram my mind and my way of thinking. And, it's important to be, I think, discerning, right? Discernment is really important. But I did have to overcome some of the skepticism. And I think some degree of skepticism is always good because it causes you to question and discern. But we have to also move beyond like needing the blaring in your face obvious sort of experience to prove it to me. Because only when I let go of needing it to be proven to me did it finally really prove itself to me.
So there's an awful lot of trust involved because you're putting yourself in a really vulnerable position where you're just having to believe it or to trust that it's real. And Will, I was thinking about you talking about the five senses and feeling. I mean, feeling it's a big one, and it can have two different meanings. It can be like something you feel with your hand, but you also have to look at it as something you can feel inside. So you can't negate those feelings because those are just as real as something you're feeling with your hand.
Yeah, it's hard for me to feel them, right? Because I'm so disconnected throughout life that, like Dr. Theresa's talking, it's such a subtle feel that it just, like, I've never felt anything. I'm sure I have, but I haven't noticed the feeling.
This is where I think the mystery school has various methods for helping activate and awaken our senses. So like when I got the life activation, it started to connect me more to the intuition. I had an intuition. I always had intuition, but I often doubted it and negated it in my mind. I'd rationalize it away. And then as I got into the higher levels of training, so with the Empower Thyself initiation, for example, the first step, we help you to learn tools and techniques where you can broaden your senses. And what some people call the sixth sense is actually just a broadening of your perception of the five physical senses. And you can train them to become more in tune with even the subtle things. And it's through practice, right? And then there's also something called the five spiritual senses. And so when you go to like our second step of initiation, we're really working with people on how to perceive through their energy field and through the five spiritual senses. And in science today, we call this the biofield, but you get more in tune with it. And through my process of actually doing the activations on people, at first I actually thought, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't perceive any of this. I'm just following the protocol and trusting, right? And hoping that it's doing something. But then the feedback kept coming, and then the more I did, the more I started to perceive. And so we can train ourselves to become more open. And I think that's the better way of doing it is you're creating new neural pathways within, and you're broadening your range of perception that your senses, and your both your nervous system as well as the framework of our energy field is attuned to. So it's just learning to tune into the right frequencies. And everyone can learn this. I've had lots of people come through the process who said, I can't feel anything. I don't know, and they needed it all coming through the mind. But then as they went through the steps, they did start to feel and perceive. And the more you practice it, the more you will become aware of it. So it's very possible.
I should put it out there because someone like me who feels like I don't feel that to know that anyone can do it is great. But then the question, here's impatient Will coming in. What's the time? Like, how long is this, like a 20-year thing, or is it, can they start feeling, I know it's probably everyone's different. I know that, but like for the initiation part of the modern mystery school, for example, how long is that period of time?
That depends on the person. So, that within the first year, within just, life activation, step number 1, first step of initiation, step number 2, you get a lot of tools to start working with right away. And within a year, you could be, really perceiving in a whole new way. But it depends on your use. It depends on your desire to apply the tools and to practice and to work with the techniques that are given. But I've had people who've gone just to the next step, which is the second step of initiation, the Healers Academy, and they walk in there going, I can't feel any of this. They walk out going, oh my God, I felt it. So. Right. So that's just within a year, people can accomplish that. But it really depends on the individual and their will to use the tools to build up the pathways within oneself, because it is just a matter of training. Just like a blind, somebody who is born seeing and then at some point loses their eyesight, they have to train themselves in a whole new way to perceive the world around them. And they have to become more adept at the sense of touch, at the sense of hearing. We can all do that. We don't need to lose our sight to develop those senses. So it's just a matter of practice. And that's how we rewire the brain. And that's how we become more, kind of open up the veils of our own perception. So have you ever had like a intuitive gut feeling, like something's not right, or like, ooh, I really need to be paying attention here. So that is intuition, right? You can feel, and often every single person is doing this. In modern science, they call it thin slicing. We're taking in information constantly, and our deep brain, right? The old brain is measuring this information through the senses and communicating it to maybe the higher parts of our brain. But within 2 seconds, it's actually been scientifically proven that within 2 seconds or less, you can size up a situation to 85% accuracy. And that what science is calling thin slicing, that's our intuition. It's the nervous system just taking in information and coming up with a snap judgment about something. Now, we have to be careful of how our biases filter or color our snap judgments. So there's also this process of quieting the mind, right? And the more you can, like, meditation is a major tool for quieting the mind. The more we quiet the mind and we don't come up with those judgments and lay them on top of what we're perceiving, then we can just perceive. And so, these tools like meditation, various energy practices and things we might call rituals, chants, like all of these things help tune us in to these frequencies, but we all have it. It's all there. We just may not realize how we're using it. So it's also a process of just becoming more conscious of how we perceive, because everyone perceives a bit differently. Some are really kinesthetic, some are really visual, some are auditory, some are kinesthetic. I think that kinesthetic people have the most challenging time because they think they should be seeing it, they should be hearing it, they should be having these amazing visions, but instead, it's a physical sensation, and you feel like you're meditating, but you feel like you're in a cloud of darkness, but you're feeling something, but you don't know what you're feeling. And it can be really frustrating. That was how I was. I'm very kinesthetic and I can visualize, but it's a secondary strength. And so sometimes I just feel like I'm sitting in a cloud of darkness and I don't know what I'm feeling or why I'm feeling, but I can feel, but I don't know why. And I had to hone this ability in, but down the line, it creates something we call clairsentience, which is you just know. You don't have to interpret it.
Mhm.
You just know it. And that is actually the highest
Mm.
form of psychic ability, is this clairsentient.
Mm.
But it,
Wow.
it's something that we train over time. So yeah.
See, that would be useful when people start dating.
Yeah.
Just save a lot of time, a lot of heartache.
But then
People
we wouldn't be
already get
married,
that
love.
sense, but they just reject it because they want it so badly, right? It's the ego
That's true.
attachment.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Well, then, of course, the more you practice it, the better you're going to be at it. The easier it's going to come to you. It's just like everything else in life. If you are sitting on your couch, Will, and expecting things to come to you, then it's not going to happen, right? You gotta have to put some effort into it, and that's really the story of what we're talking about here, because it is just like another muscle that you're having to work out to make it happen.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
I could just sit here and listen to you talk for days. Quickly before we go, what's the first step besides obviously reaching out to the Modern Mystery School? If someone's not ready to do that just yet, but they are interested in moving forward with their spiritual awakening, what would you say would be the first step someone who's just starting out should do?
Well, practice meditation. Even
Okay. Yep.
a
Really
lot of people think, oh, I can't meditate. Well, that I would say yes, you can. You just think meditation is something different than what it really is. Just practicing breathing, just paying attention to your breathing, and just in breath, out breath, and just really bring your focus to that, and do it for 5 minutes a day. Like just that is going to start a process. But you want to pull the breath deeper into the below the navel. You want to pull the breath down into the body rather than just breathing shallow. My mystery teaching series is a really fantastic opportunity to get a broad sweep of various mystery school teachings with the science. And they can find that on Gaia TV, or they can just go to mysteryteachings.com and, find the links to get into that. But it's a subscription, but it's a worthwhile subscription. And Gaia has, of course, a lot of other stuff available on it. There's some great things, always being discerning. I have other things, like I have an online course called the Quantum Transformation Formula. And that's, something that people can just kind of touch on their own if they're self-driven to pursue it. Other people really want the in-person experience, so most of the mystery school work is done in person. It's not something that we would do remotely or online. It requires reaching out to someone local to you, or getting on a plane and traveling to someone who can offer. But you don't need to make commitments to anything. It's like, just try one session. So if someone was to just try something out, dip their toe in the water, go get a life activation, and that's the place where it really starts. And it plugs you back into your potential and your own intuition, and just kind of things start aligning more with your higher potential in your life when you do that. I think there's only so much you can do sitting at home. At some point, it really requires getting out there. But they can come to theresabullard.com. I've got a lot of resources. I've got a lot of stuff on YouTube as well. We have a show called the Quantum Minds TV, where, I'm having conversations with various other experts, and we're talking about what's it going to take to create a shift in human consciousness. My husband and I also have something called the Quantum Learning Academy, where it's more for, if they're not necessarily ready to dive into the mystery school, there's a lot of other tools that bring the science and the metaphysics together, mind and body together, all of it into one place. And that's something that we'll be launching in 2024. So there's a lot of opportunity. And, the thing of today, if I just can finish this, is there's so much available today, right? There's everything under the sun is available to people today. And you need to find what resonates for you. And then when you find that thing that resonates for you, and this is the other thing I find that's a little bit, that gets in the people's way in the new age, is they sort of be like butterflies flitting from one thing to the next, trying a lot of things at the surface level, but not really diving deeper because they don't want to commit to anything. I find that, that can serve you for a while until you find something that really resonates. But when you find something that resonates, dive deep into it, really commit yourself to it, because only when you commit yourself to something can you really, truly grow and get to the depths and the real gold that thing has to offer. There's a lot of great stuff out there. But ultimately our evolution requires commitment to it.
We're going to add all bunch of links in our show notes to everything that Dr. Theresa just talked about. And I can vouch for the mystery teachings because I've been an avid watcher for a long time. So if you're interested in connecting with Dr. Theresa, all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page, and you'll see all the links there in the show notes. Super easy for you to connect with her. Dr. Theresa, I just don't have any words to properly express my gratitude for you taking the time to come on the show and share of your wisdom and your expertise with us. And I know that this has helped a lot of people, not just me specifically. This has been wonderful, truly wonderful.
So great.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I thank you for the invitation. It was a great conversation.
And a huge thank you to you. Yes, you, the person that hit play on this episode. We know that there are tons of options out there, and having you decide to come along on our journey of discovery with us is an absolute honor for us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. If you did and you feel called to give back, we invite you to visit our website at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can donate to the show or subscribe as a member through our Buy Me a Coffee campaign. Your support will go a long way towards allowing Karen and I to bring you these wonderful conversations and teachings in more and more robust ways. Of course, if contributing to the show content is what you're looking for instead, well, we'd love for you to contribute by sending us a voicemail or an email from our website, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting platform that supports them. Karen and I love hearing from those that are moved to message us. It truly does fuel our passion. You are the reason we do this show, and knowing what you like and don't like help us craft the very best show we can so that we can help raise the vibration of the planet together. Now, if you know someone who would benefit from hearing the message we're sharing on the show, do them and us a favor and share the show with them. It will help get the word out about us, and it might just change someone's life for the better. Well, that's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.